Okay, I'm needing to make sure that my microphone's going to work here. I can do that without changing the scene necessarily. I'm going to go back to mute. It's just going to be about 5 more minutes here. Still getting set up a little bit in the studio. Okay, let's go live here. I think that I'm, since I have my wireless microphone as a source in this scene, I think it is active. But please tell me, because I do have the mic auxiliary input still muted. So, and I can go through and unmute that. That's not an issue. Okay, good. Yeah, like I say, I wasn't sure how that interacts because usually the mic slash aux source in OBS is the default. It's like a default microphone under Windows, I think, in a lot of occasions. And Windows, in particular with OBS, messes around. You typically have to have your default microphone that you use in the just set up on the system. Well, I don't know if there's auto-generated subtitles, Hugh. I've had to revert to that a little bit too because they're not as watching Brandon Bishop's video, and he's talking about where he's going through and reviving his 9595A, and it all of a sudden it went through and powered on for him. He's been having problems with the PSUs in the past, and I had to watch that video, the start of it, with it muted and YouTube auto-generating the subtitles because my wife was asleep at that point and I didn't want to disturb her. And my Google Pixel book is real nice, Chromebook, but the volume control doesn't have very many steps. I mean, you go from being absolutely muted to the first step, and it's loud enough for me just sitting there. And it's a really thin system, of course, being a modern their flagship product, and so I can't put my I have my USB headphones and things like that. I probably just need to get a Bluetooth headset, or have these little packs of these little miniature headphones or something that I can plug in, because I think it does have an aux jack on the side. But I went through and I did work with my bench a little bit last night. I hope, and I mean, there's the wireless microphone. Sometimes I had to go through and move it around because it was going to the point of making me, I've been relatively well pleased with it, but let's go through and let's actually put it on my suspender. Maybe that'll be a little bit less obtrusive, and it'll pick up the sound, because I was hearing a little bit of mechanical sounds already from it, and then and of course I had to dial it in and make and bring down it as a source, so it wouldn't. That's when it was clipping, is when it started sounding mechanical. But I did go through and work with my set a little bit last night. I was even going to, right as the point that I left, I was going to take a picture of the Visual Basic for DOS book that I had out there. And I already had the phone in the car warming up. My phone, that's my sound source as I'm driving. It goes through, and I actually connected into the headphone jack. I do only Bluetooth control, but then I play the auxiliary or the music, YouTube music, over my car stereo system. So it's hard for me to bring back the phone a lot of the time when when I've already got the car running and everything else. I have to turn down the volume, and I thought, well, if I needed to do a picture of the Visual Basic for DOS book last night, I could just look it up on the web somewhere. And I am catching up a little bit with my morning still. I do have at least I'm using multiple monitors here, and I want to go through. There's even been some answers. Somebody asked on the Vintage PC enthusiast group, talking about the UNPC book, and I'll answer that in a moment. Oh no, he's asking about the undocumented DOS. I thought he was talking about the UNPC book for a moment. He's asking about the floppy diskette for it, and I was going to go through and talk about the UNPC book. It's giving me the disk to that book, because he's asking if for me to put that image online. And certainly we know, we don't want any red meat eating lawyers like Microsoft and IBM can have going after us. But the when I talked to Frank Van Gillowy for the undocumented PC, he didn't even think people were reading that anymore, and I tried to get a little bit into talking about of whether some of that source that he had could be revealed basically, or updated, because there's corrections I've applied in the book. Major Tom even found a bug in the I/O port reader when he went through to. I was having issues with that MUL 30 real-time clock, and he whenever you go through and you block out a port to make it so the machine doesn't read it, and that makes it so you have a more stable machine. If you have I/O, sometimes if you write to a port, of course, like a video port, it's gonna crash the program, crash the system. But Major Tom found a bug in the I/O port reader program, and he patched it from there. So just like he's patched the system information tool and things like that. So I was even thinking about an informal third edition to UNPC, where that would start to apply some of the corrections that we've found in the book, and might be a big aspect, because certainly what we've discovered on some of the microchannel aspects has been, I mean, it's still a changing field. We're still learning about a lot of these things. So, but I just had to see how the looks like I have a lot of at least a lot of views, and I'm glad that a lot of the regulars are here as well. Maybe I'll see more dropping in with the time. I found that this time works very well for the live stream on my end, for people reacting and things like that. So it's just I'm still settling in a little bit of my morning, and we will figure out. Is everybody ready for the month of December? This is the first live stream I'm doing in the month of December, human December. But with the way that the vintage community last year in particular went through and doing the pun on things, and has turned it into December, a time, a month that we go through and release videos relating to DOS. And I explained in my video last night, real brief video, that it's not really much of a challenge for me to go through and come up with a DOS related content necessarily. I did even think about putting the Open 9557 up on the bench too for working with the Visual Basic system information tool that I'm doing. That I just decided there's no more use of kind of moving things around. The studio here is just kind of a little bit of a mess right now and everything. I need to go through and kind of get organized, better organized here. And Kit, are you interested in revealing what you Jesse's prompting with to that he's got a DOS project going, and I'm interested in hearing about it. If you want to talk about it, but you know, just chip in whatever you want to say. There's a lot of projects, not necessarily DOS related, that I need to get back to myself. I've put a lot of stuff aside, and I may have my schedule being a little bit more busy. And unfortunately, I've had to go out. I've been looking for job, and I interviewed for one last week. I will supposedly they're going to go through and give a notification here at the start of this next week, and of course, there's more to it in a modern job of going through and getting a physical done and all the other preliminary stuff. But I'm looking forward to the opportunity to be employed again. I mean, it's a necessity. Unfortunately, in these days, I'm not big enough on YouTube to monetize, so I have to look at other avenues. And there were what sounds to be three candidates total, two others, and I had the offering, maybe from my name in alphabetical order of which interview slot I would take, and I wrongly chose the first one. I thought that's a great chance to make a first impression and start them off. And I actually should have taken the last one, but I think I still did well enough in the interview. And I don't have any idea where the other two candidates were at, although it was a relatively short listing, and it was advertised locally, and they even have an application process that they provide their mailing address, of course, but they talked about dropping off the application and your resume and all that in person at the building. In other words, almost to exclusion of people from outside the area. So I hope that puts me a little bit higher up, or reduce the candidates that were there. And I think I have very strong credentials for the job, but it's going to go through, and it's going to, if I have a full-time 40-hour job, it's going to go through and it's going to cut into my life. Otherwise, really the streams that are daily, or the videos that are daily, that may be the first thing that takes a hit. It may come down to just like a weekly video on a Saturday or Sunday like this. Of course, I can still do the live stream. And really last night, I didn't have to do a video, but I thought it was it'd been nice to put something up, because what I've seen at this point with and I'm closing in on 900 subscribers. What I've seen at this point is if I do a video, it seems like I'm hitting out there in kind of the new posting. I mean, YouTube seems like that video is going somewhere to where I'm getting about a subscriber per daily video that I kick out. And that may be just an ordinary thing. But I think if I keep the pace of having a video every day, it does make people aware of my channel. There's not really any saturation or anything, I don't think, from just where I've put this in. I advertise my channel in places, and I may still be pulling in people that are seeing that mainly in the retro PC or the vintage PC areas on Facebook, and joining from that way. But the video last night, even for it being real short and everything else, I did have a lot of responses from that. I had some people making comments I have not seen make comments before, so it seemed like it sparked up a little bit of interest at least, and I was happy for that. And so, yeah, 365 XD, and that's, are we talking ThinkPad, Jesse? For that, the 365X, I think with the following numbers, that would be a ThinkPad. And PC DOS using a server will be a server using serial Wi-Fi adapter, and a little bit of a link in on what RetroTech Chris has done with the serial Wi-Fi adapter. And of course, I'm always thinking the Ripple aspects, and the iClass and things like that. Yes, yeah, ThinkPad. I'm aware that there's the later PC series from IBM, the PC 300, the PC, and those had following letters in some cases. Like you had the PC 300 GL and things like that, of that post PS2 world kind of thing. And that was at the same time that they were, of course, started out the ThinkPad line. And those are some nice machines. In fact, I think my 365, my PC 365, that's a dual CPU motherboard in some instances. Some instances, they don't populate the second socket and all the support chips for that second CPU. But you can find the motherboards that do, and it's actually a Pentium Pro motherboard that's in those. And so you can do dual Pentium Pros, or in my case, I went through and I put in 2 of the Pentium 2 overdrives. Yeah, I don't have any of those Wi-Fi serial adapters yet, and I need to look at that. I need to, because they look like a real handy device for a lot of it. And I've brought up the Xircom, covered those and certainly Chris has covered those as well. Maybe his ears are burning for that, and we'll see him join in on the stream. But he's done a lot of reviews of or looking at the parallel port for Ethernet, and I pulled out that Xircom adapter parallel port for Token Ring, And that'll be interesting because I do have token ring stuff that's planned as well. And yeah, the old net. Okay, I'll study a little bit, and your input is appreciated in that on when I go through and kind of shop for them. And I realize even with the release, these developers, they go through and they release it to where you can even build, assemble the device, and they have variations. They do modifications and updates to that process, and so there is a little bit of variety sometimes in how those products are out there for those of us in the retro community. And so yeah, I look forward to kind of seeing what you've come up with, and I can kind of learn from that in some applications I can do here. And there is, I mean, referring to the IBM side of the token ring and in a sense, the wireless on older systems, there is, I really haven't touched on it on the channel, but there is a little bit of an effort of IBM did an old wireless. In fact, it's a flip adapter the same way as those DCA adapters I've had on the channel, where one side was the ISA bus, and then on the other side, microchannel, and those boards were a megabit per second, not really very fast or anything else like that, and it's hard to find. Some of the antenna stuff for it now is really a challenge to go through and find. But that has an aspect that may come up at some point to be have its own little topic on my channel of getting those set up, and so that may come out even here in a maybe I should bring out since I've covered the DCA flip adapters, maybe I need to cover that aspect and get a little bit of talk started that way on the for the kind of the base stations that IBM has. That's an 8227, and I've had one out even the other a couple weeks back when I had this Ethernet switch and the token ring bridge out. I did have one of those 8227s, and I've sent one to Kevin Moonlight, and he went through and worked on it a bit. I think he's learned a lot of aspects to it. He's still ordering cables and on other projects that he has, and I'm in the same way where I'm going through and trying to locate cables for some of the stuff that I've done, and if I could find a source for those antennas, that'd be even a great little thing for kind of the retro world, even though it'd be a little bit slow for that wireless aspect. It'd be kind of interesting. But let me see if I can I want to go through and yeah, I had a lot of reactions to the undocumented DOS book I had listed too, and I don't know if it necessarily has any of the areas that I look at for this undocumented DOS book, and this is a second edition. I don't. In fact, this doesn't even have the. This doesn't even have the diskette jacket that I see in it. I don't know if this would have had to include a diskette with it, but I don't know where I've got that set off. And I did have a query on Facebook on someone that was looking for the associated diskette. I would think that that'd be in this day and age, it should be archived somewhere, but I'll have to look around and see if I can find where that is. Just kind of cruising through some of my other, trying to catch up on my morning a little bit. And I didn't stop by for breakfast or anything otherwise before I came up here. Just still a little bit rushed, but that's fine. It's more important for me to get in the studio and get the system started. And if I go through and I grab breakfast on the way, I don't typically start eating it anyway until the stream's over. So it'll work out fine. They'll just pick up something after the stream is over. And I think let's go through. And I can probably answer that question about the query about the diskette to the undocumented PC. I got talking about the undocumented DOS. I got talking about the undocumented PC programs that are included with it, and it was funny because Tom was the same way. He found the book in PDF, but going through and having the programs was something that he didn't have at hand. So, but I just have to get a feel sometimes for these companies because that's still a copyrighted material, and I can't be assured that the instance where like Frank Van Gillowy did is a normal. I mean, he was as far as he's concerned, he doesn't really care. He wrote the book more than 20 years ago, and he was surprised that people were still reading it. And the way I understood is he didn't really care how, if the book was copied in some areas or the programs released that they included with the book. Just because he did it as it was the older technology that was moved away from. It wasn't really something of a current thing, and it had gone to just the hobbyists that were going through and still reading and working with the book and doing discoveries like we are. So I'll just, I have to get a feel of the other how the other authors view that. And I've got the Visual Basic for DOS. I got that started up behind me, and I'm gonna go through and I'll probably do some little programs I wanted, and having it on the newer system, I think will be helpful to me. Just in the assuredness I can flip the switch and the machine comes on. I don't have to worry about blowing something up or so I'll have that, and I want to go through and do a little bit of a program for the programming for the getting out that system descriptor table values, and have even a little program that we can start having people run to analyze a little bit of the PS2 ROMs and how they report some of their data. And on the Facebook group, I talked about the system descriptor table. That's when you run that interrupt 15 hex, C0 hex. And it even might be good for me to throw up some links. I think I've thrown up these links before. But this is the interrupt 15 hex C0, and it goes through and it returns a table of information about the system. And I talked on the Facebook group on in that video I produced where I discovered the 8556, 8557 BIOS. They go through and they have two system descriptor tables because the CPUs differ so much. And the 386SX doesn't support function calls to enable or disable the L1 cache. It doesn't have any L1 cache. And the IBM 386 SLC CPU does have internal cache, 8 KB of internal cache. And so you have the functionality to be able to turn on or off that L1 cache. But that is a reported bit of that system descriptor table of whether you're able to do that. And so the systems have to report one system descriptor table with one when you have the 386SX and another system descriptor table when you have the 386 SLC CPU. And IBM just went through and they just soldered on a 386 SLC CPU in those instances where they wanted to come up with that higher end model. And so all the planar and, they had to write a BIOS version that covered both of those. I thought it was really neat finding a system that had two system descriptor tables in it. And then Tom blows me out of the water and says, well, there's other PS2s that have more than that even. And talked about the, I guess there's even the model, I think there's the P70 is what he said, that the, it goes through and it even reports a different BIOS revision if the, depending on the CPU speed, whether it's a 16 megahertz P70 or whether it's a 20 megahertz P70. And that's funny to me. I mean, it's even where IBM, the PS2 P70s, and that's that briefcase system. The first unit that they put out was and that was supposed to be the portable versions of the Model 70 effectively. But they released the 20 megahertz PS2 P70 and first, and then later on they had a model that could be 16 megahertz or 20 megahertz 386DX CPU, and they moved around the CPU and some other stuff in there. But it was funny that you could buy a slower PS2 P70 later than the initial release of the P70. And the P70 is a little bit odd, where we saw one case where the interrupt 15 hex C9 hex doesn't go through, and it doesn't the call is left out of the BIOS. It goes through and it properly supports saving away that value, but the later call doesn't work. It's broken. And so the cases where that this discovery is still going on, it's kind of funny for all that. We're finding all the little bugs in these BIOSes and things like that that slip through, and they're out there now. We just have to go through and that's what I'm talking about, going through and doing updates on the UNPC book, that undocumented PC book by Frank Van Gillowy. It went through a first and second edition. I think it's time for a third edition, to to be out there for information for people and have a little bit of the corrections that we've learned in other areas, at least in relating to the IBM world, the PCs and the PS2s. Hi, Chris. Maybe your ears are burning a little bit earlier. We were talking about the wireless serial adapters, and yeah, there you are. But we've been just some of the things that we're working on for the month of December, and I'm just looking at updates, and it looks like a real good following. Well, yeah, I know, and I know that you have those schedules that that you're on, and yeah, I was saying that I didn't have any of those yet. That's something I haven't delved into quite yet, and I mean, heck, it's newfangled enough for me to have a wireless microphone, and just in the hope that it's going to work and doesn't have the problems I've had with some of the other wireless microphones, because wired microphone for me, it's a challenge, and I have it standing by in case mine goes out at all, that I know I can quickly latch onto it and plug it in and get it going. So, but yeah, the performance metrics. And people use a lot of, that's something I haven't adapted to either. People use a lot of their phones for Facebook and everything else, and I just can't handle that small of screen for working with things. I know that you go through and you use your phone as a recording for your video recordings and things like that, and that just that blows me away. I can't. I'm just so much older school, and having the different sources I do, the microphones and the $20 camcorders that I've picked up at times that just have functioned well enough for me to use on the channel. Benchmarking. Yeah, and then Phil's Computer Lab, he's the one that had all the list of the benchmarking, and that's the stuff that I plan to use for the Model 56 and 57 benchmarking. The the DOS networking. And in the past, there's and he's kind of quiet because he has other focus he does. He's very involved in the music stuff in Germany. But Alfred Arnold is an old time SIF news group person that was on the group. He's on actually the Facebook group, although he doesn't typically respond. I've got him friended actually on Facebook, just because I've known him a long time and everything, and he had done some networking benchmarks in relation to the PS2s on the Ethernet side. And the one thing, oh, you bought a whiz-bang camera. He, because the PS2 world, the IBM PS2 world, you have to remember Ethernet and Token Ring was king with IBM networking, but IBM did also need Ethernet adapters. They and there's third-party adapters that were for the PS2s, but you got to remember that's the time frame that was 10 megabit per second. Ethernet was the very most, and in some cases you're lucky to have a 10 base T connection, an RJ45, rather than a coax or an AUI for the board. But he has a page, and Major Tom probably went through and archived it to some form. And that's, and I say the main thing is there's two microchannel 100 megabit per second adapters. And for the one, it's an IBM adapter. Very nice. Probably has very good performance, very well constructed. And it's 32-bit microchannel. But it's not for the PS2s. It's for the RS6000 workstations. And there was attempts to go through and try and get it to work under PS2s, and of course those were unsuccessful. Even AIX, I think. And that the other network adapter that is supposed to be 100 base T or 100 megabit per second is the Olicom adapter. And there was questions, of course, on the group initially. In fact, it's a 16-bit microchannel board of how the system or the bus could keep up with 100 megabit per second. And that was one of the things that spurred Alfred to go in and test those up against each other. And he, I don't know if Tom has it. Linked in there or not. But he went through and he checked them against each other, and of course the Olicom adapter, it was performing at something like the most he could get out of it was 13 megabit per second of anything of a sustained nature. It actually was very close to the level of a 10 megabit per second adapter. And Olicom, in addition to other manufacturers, they also made token ring boards. And the token ring, being the 16 megabit per second, in a lot of instances, could effectively beat out Ethernet at that time. But I understand, Ethernet is a really inexpensive interface, and you understand why it won the network wars, the network, media type of, just because it was easier to produce, a lot more, less expensive to make an adapter, and that's how it went out. And of course, once it hit into the 100 megabit per second, it was over. And one or two glitches. I'll have to go through and review a little bit too, because I want to make sure that it's able to keep up in this instance. And I see at least it has a little sound level indication, and I get watching on my OBS, and I can see that meter moving at least, so I know that it's going through. But that meter moves when it's making mechanical noises too, or or maybe clipping or something like that. Um, it the same way. So I have no real other feedback as most other YouTube live streams of what the actual audio is, and this one's fairly neat. In fact, if it would really function good, because it wasn't really cheap, I think it was like 60, 70 bucks. It even has a headphone jack on the device itself, and I like, of course, to have my 5.1 sound system going for listening to the computer. I don't like having, if it's a wireless mic, why am I going to go through and have wired headphones on my ears that even have a shorter cord and would be more constraining? And of course, I have the speaker system on when I do a live stream, but normally when I do a video, of course, I just go through and I power it off. And yeah, so I'm going to go through and I'm going to read a little bit of the input. I'm just watching the time a little bit too. Yeah, and the particular aspects I'm going to cover in the token ring side is I want to cover the ability to do a bridge between token ring and Ethernet, because even if I go through and set up a token ring network, it's going to be of the interest to go through and to get that connected into an internet router to be able to get those systems online to some extent. And that requires a bridge device or some other way of going through and getting that token ring over to Ethernet, because there's not any manufacturers, of course, that do a gateway device of token ring now for your internet connection. And so that's what I'll be looking at a little bit there is the thought of the token ring bridge. And IBM, for what it's worth, and it even goes the other way a little bit, I'll talk about that in a moment, that token ring tends to be what's built in. Even on those 8227 wireless devices, there's the token ring code, or the ability to do connectivity that exists at a low level on those devices. And it's even interesting for that and I think I've even got them put away. I did have, well, how far do I have those at hand? Because I did photos of the token ring stuff. Yeah, I got kind of those off in the box, but I can probably explain well enough. But it's interesting to see the pictures of those. In fact, I've got a picture that I put up, and I put it up for Major Tom because he's going through and he's doing a lot of updates to the Arden Tool site. And I took pictures of the token ring stuff for him. And the streamers, it's real interesting because there's a guy on the Facebook group now, and there's back channel communication between me and him and Tom. And he's an old, well, I don't want to say old. He used to work for IBM doing the microcode on the LAN streamers. And that's the token ring board that were, I mean, really nice boards for the so-called streamer and that data streaming. If you had a PS2 that would go through and support that, to very good performance, very good throughput and everything else. But IBM had an Ethernet component on those streamers that that end up not being developed. They just had a and it's interesting because you can see the pads of where, that's the bottom view, of where these Ethernet components would go on the, yeah, that's as good as any. This is the auto. I'll go ahead and put that link up for people to see that picture. And that'll be on the Ardent tool real soon. But if you go through and you look at that picture, if you're not happening to watch this video on your phone, and you can see a little bit more detail, you can see the areas where the Ethernet stuff is left off, and it looks like they have an AUI port, and they had a chip, some chips on there to support the Ethernet interface, but just kind of really some of those things that you learn by the people that used to be around the IBM, and what, you know, you can wonder about why are these solder pads on this adapter, and then they can tell you they have experience, they remember from back in the day of why they had that and kind of left it out of the release function. The released adapters. Excuse me. And of course we'll do a normal length of the stream of an hour. I'm not getting back into back there to I'm going through. I had the machine started up for the Visual Basic for DOS, and I haven't even stepped towards it. But I'll probably go through and I'll take a picture, or I'll find an image online of the Visual Basic for DOS manual, and just to get a little bit of talk started about who remembers or who has used Visual Basic for DOS. And it's a good DOSember related content for something like that. But I've also got to get all the Microsoft Assembler stuff I found is in the 5 1/4 diskette format. And I think that these were, at the time, I think that these were the high density diskettes, although there's a bunch of them, so they may still be the 360 KB. But I found my Microsoft Assembler. That even got a lot of stuff, a lot of chatter from my friends talking about their experience with it. And this is the standard 5.1 version. That's probably a better camera to do. And I've got to get back into. It's funny that I went through and I did do a write protect. If I get on the right side of the screen, did a write protect on that, on these diskettes, and they have the index hole. Say I'll have to look, and it otherwise should be labeled if it were the 360 KB or the 1.2 megabyte. It's not labeled, so maybe these are the 360 KB diskettes. And the way to go through and check on that, maybe just to get them on the MUL, onto the MUL 30, because I have the external 4869 360 KB diskette drive. I can easily connect to it. And then the other, I've got, this is the 6.1 version. And I probably went through and used the 3.5-inch format for this, because this pack from Microsoft is still sealed for 6.1. And 6.1 was, they changed some things around from version 5.1 standard, and it was getting a little bit into Windows programming. But of course, you get told by Microsoft that you're important to them. I'm important to Microsoft, and that they want me to register today for the use of their products, and that just is I think it has a little bit of twist of irony into them, and but I intend to go through and get those get even the Microsoft Assembler on there. I mean, there's nothing that's even more DOS-like than the 5.1 version of a macro assembler from Microsoft, because that was a lot of the program that a lot of DOS programs were done in and at the time. And just like a friend responded, I mean, he's got a love-hate relationship with the Microsoft assembler for all that. Maybe struggling against some sides of it, and then other sides being easy. But I want to get those back in place because I want to get back into doing a little bit of the coding. I need to be able to knock out some of the programs I'm thinking of quickly enough, and so I've got to get set up for that. And yeah, maybe I could need the help on. I've never gone into getting a virtual machine set up, and I know Chris does a lot of his stuff that way, where he goes through and works with the virtual machines. I know so much of the industry out there works with virtual machines, and I've never gone down enough of the path to get started myself. That would probably help me quite a bit for doing stuff as well. That I could just spin up a virtual machine of some of the things. But I'm a little bit old school. I'm used to the fact of working with old hardware and going through and of course that having all the inherent problems with that for those older machines nowadays, of going through and power supplies and other issues that we all hear about, of course. But I hope this is an informative stream. I really, it hasn't. I apologize. I didn't have a developed focus for it necessarily. I do have the things set aside that I will be working on. Those planers for the Model 56 and 57 of doing the benchmark that I'm going to do on the planer. I was looking to find that for Chris. I was looking to find that that link that Alfred Arnold did about. Oh, okay. Here we go. So here's a link from the Arden tool, and of course he gives the location of the original. In fact, I can go through, and since he may have his, I'll go through and tag him. There's the link to what Alfred Arnold did for going through and testing the microchannel Ethernet performance, the various adapters. And I might even go through and put that up on the Facebook group. In fact, it'd be fun to go through and tag Alfred since he doesn't respond a whole bunch. But at least give him credit for having done that in the past. Because I know that there's some questions sometimes of if we're limited to those 10 megabit per second adapters, of the way and being aware of which adapter you can get the most performance out of in those cases. So, and that's saying that you're not having to fall back to other connection methods of using a Zircom adapter on the parallel port or something of that nature. But you might look through that, Chris, and see how see just the aspect that somebody else did in testing the benchmarks in relation to the Ethernet adapters of the microchannel Ethernet adapters, and I thought it was a kind of a good resource to have at the time, and knowing how all these what performance you could get out of the Ethernet adapters. So, but we're past 11 o'clock. Does anybody have anything else? Yeah, it's good to get the acknowledgement. I know that you've got other things going on in your recording schedule and everything. It looks like we had a real good viewership rate over time, a real good chat response, and so I'm happy for all that. And we'll go through and just proceed through the month of December, and I'll come out with some other topics of that relating to that, and try and move forward in these other projects I have, because I know that there are some people that want me to get back a little bit more into the PC related content, and focused on it a little bit better again, or returning to that for all the developments that are going on. And there's a need for that. I feel a pull to try and get me back into the PS2s and other topics that I don't want to exclude or don't want to forget about on my channel. So Hugh, and that I've had this in a few other videos recently. This is the 7588 that I have in the background, and let me get over to. So, and I have two machines that are in this style built up. The 7500 series, of course, is the IBM Industrial Systems, and it is. In fact, I'll have to see on what view that my camcorder can do that as well. But it's actually the single board PICMG boards that the single board computers, and then it has the backplane for this level. And there's a lot of information that's on the Arden tool about these. All the diskettes, all the manuals, everything else that were on these things is archived. So they're really good. This one actually is kind of interesting because it has a zip drive and the 1.44 megabyte floppy. But this is the way I got this machine. And of course, normally you have a locking cover. And I do have keys on my other one. And it does go through and work. I think these are key to light. The other one I have is the industrial gray that you come to expect from IBM, but that's with the cover closed. And of course, you can hear all the racket otherwise of the fan. These industrial systems, they like moving air through the system. And since I don't have any of the top screws in it, there's kind of the underneath the covers. It's got the hard drive tray on top, and that holds the adapters in the back plane underneath. Power supply in this back corner, and of course you saw the disk drives in this corner, and that single board computer right down the center. So it's kind of a nifty little machine. I'm even grateful for that. It must be the clear click that was giving me the interference. I did the other video and I had a little bit of wobble on video wobble when I ran the Visual Basic screen, and that's probably to be expected for you're creating a full screen, a graphical screen from the using text characters basically for Visual Basic for DOS. And when I'm on, I just go to my regular monitor from this. At least I'm getting a kind of a good, that shows up better. It doesn't show up any wobble or anything like that. Yeah, I did a video on it, or I showed all the multi-serial ports and everything else. And it's an interesting machine for all that. I'll get out my other one at some point too. But having all those, IBM did those single board computer adapters that are for these systems. And for the industrial design, I mean, it's on the back plane and you just swap out, you're able to swap out that CPU card to do an upgrade. And so, yeah, and I know I feel bad for you being under the weather and everything else. And I don't know what the speaking of weather, I don't know what the weather is like in Scotland, but it's been warm enough down here in New Mexico. I even wore shorts the other day. I mean, felt a little bit of chill, but it's, you know, it's not a typical, Decembers aren't Decembers anymore. And, you know, as far as the temperature is concerned, at least, it's still rather moderate. And of course, down here it does get cold in the evenings. And that's where I felt it when I went home to feel how cold it was. But we're not going to talk about December in this instance. We're going to try and keep it focused on December for the span of the month. We still have a lot of the month to go. We can do those videos that are pertaining to that December theme, and I'll have to look out there and see how the other channels are getting started. I want to see what Chris comes up with too for some of the videos that he can do, and so yeah, it's I'm gonna go through and of course I'm feeling a little bit, I've got to get something to eat and get going on with my day, but I do appreciate people stopping by. This is the looking at the concurrent viewers and things like that, from the way I have to interpret YouTube a lot of the time, it does look like we had a pretty high viewership here, and so I'm glad for that. But look forward to seeing you, and I'll be chatting to you, Hugh, and as I say, I hope that you feel better. And I know there's probably a stereotypical understanding of the weather in Scotland, or what's understood to be what the weather in Scotland is. And yeah, so I hope that doesn't affect you too much, and that you get feeling better and able to go through and do what you need to do. But you know, this is IBM Museum, and that's all I have for now. That's the way I'll go through and sign out and to end the stream. Thanks for watching, everybody. Thanks for participating, and look forward to seeing you around and having you participate next week as well. Bye bye.